4.6 is one of my favorite sections of this entire class, Algebra 2. I love to complete the square. I just love the way it makes my brain feel. I love how you can use completing the square to do some really cool things algebraically and graphically. I just love it all. But before we can complete the square, I think we need to really think about what is it asking us for? What are we completing? What is the square we are completing? Well, let's take a look at some examples. All right, so let's begin by making perfect square trinomials. Perfect square trinomials. So to make perfect square trinomials, our goal is to get something that we can write as x plus a quantity squared or x minus b quantity squared. So in factored form, we end up with something that can be written as a square, like so. So I've got 3 examples for us. Example 1, x squared plus 6x plus something can turn into a perfect square trinomial and then be factored to make it look like x plus a quantity squared. Well, what will complete this square is the number 9. So if I plug in a 9 right here, then I end up with, what 2 numbers will multiply to 9 but add up to 6? Well, that would be 3 and 3. And so then I can rewrite this as x plus 3 quantity squared. Now, I don't want you to do any of this. I don't expect you to do any of that. This is all going to be something you can just think your way through. So let's do some more practice. Practice makes perfect. X squared minus 10x plus something will give me a perfect square trinomial. So, have any ideas? Any good ideas? Well, what you're going to do in order to figure out what number will complete the square is you take half of your middle term, so in our case, negative 10. You're going to take half of negative 10, and then you're going to square it. Well, half of negative 10 is going to be negative 5, and negative 5 squared is going to be 25. So notice that when you're completing a perfect square trinomial, your last term is always going to be plus something, or it's going to be positive. And that comes from the fact that when you square something, no matter what, when you square a negative, it becomes positive. When you square a positive, it stays positive. Okay, so anyway, rewriting this as a perfect square trinomial then, you're thinking, what 2 numbers would multiply to 25 but add up to negative 10? That would be negative 5 and negative 5. So you know what? I've got a mistake. I need to change this. X minus 5 quantity squared. And that was a really good mistake. I'm glad that I just made that because this is a teachable moment. This middle sign will always be the same as what's in your factor. See that? Plus was your middle term, plus will be the thing that's in your factor. All right, let's try another one. This one I'm going to really just encourage you to try on your own. How about, let's take a look at x squared plus, I'm going to do minus, x squared minus 4x plus something. Can you complete the square? And can you write it in factored form? Take a minute. Did you come up with 4, and then this becomes x minus 2 quantity squared? So did you take half of negative 4 and square it? Half of negative 4 would be negative 2, and then negative 2 squared is what gave me the 4. And then maybe you're seeing another pattern. Let me point out that other pattern for you as well. Whatever this is goes right here. Whatever this is goes right here. Whatever this is went right there. Okay, I lied. One more. Let's try one more. Example 4. I'm going to try and give you a really tough one. Number 4, let's do, how about x squared plus 16x, complete the square. Can you complete the square? What did you fill in the box? Did you plug a 64 in the box? Is your answer x plus 8 quantity squared? All right, so what did I do here? Half of 16 was 8. 8 squared gave me 64, and then that 8 went right here. Positive 8, positive 8. I'm going to put it in orange so you see it. Positive 8, positive 8. All right, well, let's get down to business. Let's use completing the square to do some work. Okay, so I want to solve these next few problems by completing the square. Okay, example A. I want to solve x squared plus 4x minus 21 is equal to 0. So to complete the square, what we have to do is turn one side into a perfect square trinomial. So the very first step will be to make room to complete the square. So I'm going to add 21 to both sides. I'm going to write this step as make room to complete the square. So now I have x squared plus 4x. I have room to complete the square, and that's equal to 21. But now that I'm ready, whoops, oh dear. But now that I'm ready to complete the square, notice that what I did over here, oh boy, this is a disaster. Come on, scroll down. Here we go. All right, so what in my next step here, if I add a square here, I have to add a square over here. So I added the square, now I'm adding another square. I have to keep the equation balanced. Keep the equation balanced. So in algebra, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it to both sides. So what you do to one side, you must do to the other. Add 6 to both sides, or divide both sides by 12, or whatever. When you're completing the square, if you add a square to one side, you have to add a square to the other. Now, I've been really literal. Like, I have literally added a square, a 4-sided region. But now I'm going to complete the square. So x squared plus 4x plus something is equal to 21 plus something. What number will complete the square? What will complete the square is half of 4, which is 2, squared. And that goes here and here. And what I did now in this step, in this third step, I make a perfect square trinomial. And that's what we did at the top of this page. We made a perfect square trinomial. Okay, and then in the next step, I'm going to factor, and I'm going to keep that in purple because this is brand new work. Well, this side will be 25, and then over here, this was x plus 2 quantity squared. So see the right-hand side of that work we did up above. So this, you're just factoring. You're thinking, what two numbers multiply to 4 and add to 4? You are thinking. I hope you're not writing, because that's going to be a waste of your time. 2 and 2. So x plus 2 quantity squared. Here, I factored and simplify. I factored the left-hand side, and I simplified the right-hand side. And then now what I'm going to do is just solve. So check this out. X plus 2 quantity squared is equal to 25. I'm going to square root both sides, When I do that, now I have x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 5. The square root of 25 is 5. And in this step, I'm going to square root to undo the square. Square root to undo the square. And then final step here, this is going to be pretty basic. I'm going to subtract 2. I'm going to subtract 2. And my final answers will be x is equal to positive 5 minus 2, and x is equal to negative 5 minus 2. So 3 and negative 7. Those are my solutions. So from there I just solved using algebra. I don't think I need to write this down. But I would like to say that the fundamental theorem of algebra says that whatever the degree is on whatever you're working on will tell you how many solutions you should expect. So because I was working with a second degree polynomial, a quadratic x squared, I need to have 2 answers. Now I might have 2 answers, I might have 1 answer, and I might have 0 answers depending on the nature of the problem. If I have just 1 answer, then technically that means that answer is showing up with a multiplicity 2, so it's showing up in multiples of 2. If I have no answer, that means that I'm getting an answer in the complex plane, which we'll talk about in section, I think it's 4.7 or 4.8. So the fundamental theorem of algebra technically says that you're going to have 2 zeros in the complex and or real plane. Okay. That was that. I have one more example I want us to talk through, and I know that we're kind of pushing the 11-minute mark, but let's keep going. Let's do another example, letter B. With letter B, we have 3x squared minus 12x minus 5 is equal to negative 11. So I want to include this one because I think this is as bad as it's going to get. And if you can, like I said before, if you can hang with me through this one, you'll be okay. All right, so the first step I need to do is prepare to complete the square. Prepare. So this is my prepare step. Check it out. I'm going to add 5. I have 3x squared minus 12x is equal to negative 6. And then I'm going to factor out a 3. X squared minus 4x is equal to negative 6. I'm going to divide both sides by 3 at this point, and that gives me x squared minus 4x is equal to negative 2. So if you're wondering why I'm using so many parentheses, I don't know, it's just a habit. I'm thinking of like, I'm going to have a perfect square trinomial. I would like to have it safe and sound in a set of parentheses. All right, so far so good. I'm taking a minute to double check my math. I factored out a 3. Yep. My negative 11 plus 5, that is indeed negative 6. I divided and I still have negative 2. Okay, so I'm still preparing. So I'm going to add and I'm going to add. That looks good. Okay, now we complete the square. So in this step, I complete the square. So what will complete that square? Half of negative 4 is going to be negative 2, and then when I square that, that's just going to be a 4. So a 4 there and a 4 over here. Add a 4 to the left, add a 4 to the right. I'm keeping that equation balanced. All right, I completed the square. Now I'm going to factor the left and simplify the right. Factoring the left is going to be a little bit harder than simplifying the right. Negative 2 plus 4 is just 2. That was easy. Now, what would this factor into? So you're thinking, what 2 numbers would multiply to 4 but add up to negative 4? That would be negative 2 and negative 2. So x minus 2. So you've probably, maybe you remember the shortcut from the previous examples, but remember, this business goes right here. So, you know, you really can take a shortcut there. Okay, we're down to just the solve step. So let's solve. Now we're going to solve, and I'm going to square root both sides. I square root this, and I square root that. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. I have x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 2. Add 2. Actually, I'm maybe going to do that in a different color. I don't know. What do you think? Are you still following along? Plus 2 and plus 2. And then my final answers I will write as x square root of 2 plus 2, and then negative square root of 2 plus 2. And those are my final answers. That's it. Okay. So I think that's a good place to stop. And tomorrow we'll practice completing the square, and we'll look at all the different places where you might run into issues. But I'm going to call it a day at 15 minutes.